Welcome to the Third Realm Integration Podcast, where our unconscious minds meet and the transformation begins. I am your host, Maegan Kenney, licensed psychotherapist, soul retrieval shamanic healer, and heart conscious practitioner. Let's get started. Welcome, everybody. We are here again for another episode of the Third Realm Integration Podcast. We are back, like on the weekly time schedule this time. I don't know what has gotten into me, but it seems that I do feel a little bit of a desire, a yearning, not a craving, but an urge, a pull, a gravitational magnetic pull to really spend a lot of time in technology right now. And it's interesting because I do feel like as a Gemini with Saturn in my third house, that my experience with communication has been difficult over the years. And one of the ways that I find balance and harmony and peace with it is to express myself using technology. Technology being a channel, a portal to make the communication happen, where I can bring my ideas, my thoughts, my words, my reflections, my teachings to a platform that other people can access and benefit from as well. So, today, I wanted to talk about why people don't heal and the role that karma and soul contracts play in why people don't heal. So I think this comes up for a lot of people who struggle watching a loved one or a friend struggle. So when we watch somebody fall into the depths of addiction, not find their way out, remain stuck there, or struggle with mental illness, struggle with depression, struggle with anxiety, struggle with certain behaviors, and we see a part of the behavior emanating from free will and choice, which is a very controversial thing to say in the world of addiction, to say that any aspect of the addiction is a choice. And yes, there is a part that is a choice. It might not be a conscious choice all the time. And there is definitely a conscious part of the choosing, 100%. Don't let anybody tell you any different. If I decide that I'm going to use, if you decide that you're going to use, that is a choice that you have made. And we can't possibly say that there's no agency of choice in the active use of addiction, but then say that there is agency of choice in the active pursuit of recovery. The pursuit of recovery. If we pursue recovery, that's an active choice. We were under the influence when we made the decision, or were forced into a decision to get clean. How can that be a choice, but actively using isn't a choice? Now, do the drugs hijack our reason and our capacity to think long-term and foresee the long-term consequences of our behavior? And has that part of the mind and the brain been hijacked so it makes it really difficult to stop? Yeah, absolutely. There are the talons of the drug have made its way into you 100%. But you could also choose to go down the much more difficult road, which is to get clean, go through the withdrawal, get clean, and move forward. It's just that the pull to keep using is just a little bit stronger. So, but it is still a choice, because I could choose to go the other way. I just don't want to deal with all that, right? When we're in active addiction, I can't, right? I can't do it. I have work tomorrow. I can't be sick. I can't go to rehab right now. I have to plan this out. I can't just leave my job, my family, whatever. So there is an agency of choice over that. And so when we look at people that are still stuck in all of that chaos, And we say, we've given them every opportunity. There's been every opportunity in front of them to move into a space of healing. Why are they not taking it? Why are they actually refusing it? Refusing the opportunity to go to rehab, refusing the opportunity to live a healthier, more balanced, more harmonious, less chaotic, less intense life. And we have to ask ourselves, why do people not heal? There are some people that actively choose to stay sick. Yeah, they do. I know parents have a really hard time hearing this. I remember working with a family many years ago. And I remember having a family phone call where the child was starting to slip again. So I had a phone call with the family. And I said, your child is afraid to step into full healing. And here are the reasons why. And so I set the conversation up to be that the person was choosing to not take the opportunity to heal. And here was why. The parents wanted to continue to see the child, who was an adult at this point, like a full adult, as the victim. Oh, she just has limitations. She can't do these things. No. You guys want to see it like that she is somehow so broken that she can't do the things that we're asking her to do. I'm telling you that she's actively choosing to not pursue the road that we're presenting her right here into recovery. And here's why. And the parents could not wrap their head around that. Yes, people choose to not heal. And a lot of times it is unconscious. So I do want to be mindful of that. I'm talking about the situations in which, like, every person around the sick person has tried to help them and they just won't go forward with it. And it's like pulling teeth to try to get them to agree to accept any help at all. And then the people that maybe have been in therapy for years and years and like nothing is changing. And there is a piece to these types of situations where they are actively choosing to not heal. Most of the time, people are acting from a place of being unconscious, though. So I just want to put that caveat out there. That's the majority of the time. The majority of the time, people are just kind of stuck and they just don't know how to wake up because they don't know what they don't know. It's kind of like a fine line here. I don't want to get too much in the weeds. It can be both. But I think if we always think that people are actively choosing to refuse support and help and refusing to get better, it starts to build resentment towards that person. So I don't want to say that that's always the case. Most of the time, people are operating from an unconscious place. That's why I do the work that I do, to help people bring what's in the unconscious up into the conscious mind and the conscious experience. So then something can be done about it. But what I'm talking about is when that process is unfolding, where I'm helping bring some content from the unconscious into someone's conscious mind and their ego is so strong that it just keeps resisting it. And now the person is like going back on meds and they're going back into all of these dependency patterns. That's a choice to go back into the sickness and to go deeper into the sickness. And so you have to ask yourself, why does this person not want to heal? Because it's not like they don't have the information available at their fingertips. They do. And they understand that the life that they're living is problematic for them in all of these different ways, yet they're choosing to keep it going. It's like, when we know complaining is not a good place for our mind to be and what it causes, but yet we're addicted to complaining. It's like, okay, we have to ask ourselves why we don't want to give up the complaining. Why don't we want to get sober from the complaining? So I just wanted to break down a little bit as to why people don't want to heal or why people don't heal. And I actually would say why people don't want to heal. In this particular situation, that I'm this kind of like nuanced flavor of how people don't evolve, I'm going to talk about the part where people actually don't want to do it. And yeah, there is a desire to not heal in these types of situations, but there's also the bigger piece that's underneath, which is there's a reason why the person doesn't want to heal in the first place. And that's because of what we're going to talk about today. It's because there's too much of a function that is getting served by staying sick. I talked about this a little bit in the last episode. Somebody has cancer, and all of a sudden, they get the attention that they've been craving their whole life. The validation, not just the attention. Like, what comes with the attention is the validation, the opportunity to be seen, be heard, be meaningful to somebody else, be a priority to somebody else. When they go in for their cancer treatment and the team of doctors and nurses wheel them right in and tend to their every need, it's clear to that person in that moment that they are these doctors and nurses' first priority right now. And that might be the first time that they've ever had that experience in their life, especially if they've experienced abuse or neglect in childhood or whatever, any other pattern that might be related to that. And so they might be, you have to ask yourself that's why I always go to this question when I'm working with people. They have this pattern that they want to, get rid of and resolve. Well, we don't just start there. We actually have to backtrack a little bit. We don't just start with developing kind of the solution as to how to move forward, because you've tried a million things over and over how to move forward, and you haven't yet. The question becomes, how is the pattern serving you? What need is it meeting in you? The story of Jesus in the Bible, walking over the blind man and not providing him the opportunity for sight when he had the capacity to do that. Jesus says, because if I give this man sight, his life will end. Every way in which he knows how to be in the world will end. He is surviving because of that lack of sight at this point, because people come in and take care of him. And if he didn't have that, he wouldn't be able to take care of himself. I'm paraphrasing here, but that's essentially what it is. It's like, when we begin to expand consciousness, we have to go through the levels and through the gates, and it has to be step by step. And we're only going to be given the information that we can handle at that time. And if we overwhelm ourselves, or we try to move too fast, or try to take on too much, or frankly try to grow too big too fast, it's not going to work. That's where this idea of divine timing comes in also. Everything happens at the time that really it's supposed to. But there is a meaning, there is a order of the universal events, the cosmic events that we encounter. There really is a system to it. We don't see it, we often don't know it, but it's there. And so when things happen at the times that they happen, there's a system behind that. And they're only going to change when the lesson has been learned and integrated, and the person no longer needs that experience anymore. If the blind man's soul got to a point where it no longer needed to be taken care of by other people and could fully take care of itself, then the sight would return, essentially. Jesus would be able to say, okay, well, now's the time that this man can see and would benefit from it. There are some times when healing can actually kill somebody too. I don't mean to sound so blunt and drastic and dire, but we all have this assumption, not all of us, some of us get it, but very few. I've never heard anybody else say this other than my teacher, that sometimes healing will kill that person. It's the anguish that drives enough energy through that person's entire being to keep that person alive. And sometimes I wonder whether or not that's something to think about when we're really trying hard to make somebody heal. And you kind of never know this answer, but I think when you become more in tune with this stuff, you maybe start to get it a little bit. But there are some people in my life where I've wondered, wow, if that person actually drops down their ego, if that ego softens, that person's actually going to die. The flood of reality moving through the psyche will actually kill the body. Because that person actually can't, the reason why they're here is to work through all of this struggle that the ego is manifesting. That's their karma. So you take that away, and I often wonder, I do wonder this question. I don't have the answer to this question. But like, let's say you resolve the karmic contract that you have with somebody and you say, I forgive you, I release you. We'll rip this contract up. We're done doing this. Does that mean the relationship ends entirely? Does that mean you or the other person could actually now no longer need to be here on this planet, in this physical form, on this earth? If that was like the last karmic debt you had to pay off? What happens when you pay off all the karmic debt? Where do you go from there? Do you just remain living here and remain now in peace, live in peace? Or is that the end of the individuation process? And do you now move on to the next realm? So I think, I do think on an unconscious level, on a vibrational level, a lot of people do understand this, not consciously, but unconsciously. And I actually think that that might be at the root for a lot of people as to why they don't heal or are afraid to heal. Sometimes it's a fear-based illusion that I'm not going to be able to handle the change of what it means to heal. I also think there's another part, though, that the person might actually know that they might die if they heal. And what a crazy thing to think about. We think healing is like what everybody's supposed to do. It's not. It's actually not. And so if somebody is being served too much by being the victim and they're getting too many needs met and they're able, like my teacher used to talk about an example of a patient that she worked with at one of the hospital rooms, not at the emergency rooms, when she was doing the psychological assessments for people that would come in. And there was a patient who was chronic and she was dependent on, I don't know if it was Medicaid, Social Security, something, but housing from the government, money from the government and whatnot. And she was like a registered dependent, right? Like she was registered somewhere that she was dependent on receiving the support of the government, the governmental system. The woman struggled with various flares of mental illness. And my teacher was working with her and she started to get better. She started to come off the meds. The symptoms started to resolve. And then the Medicaid system, we'll just call it Medicaid, shut her off from her housing and her, I would probably say food stamps. I don't know if they called them that back then. They shut her off. Next thing you know, my teacher's getting a call saying her patient's in the hospital. She had a breakdown again. And sure enough, she goes back into the inpatient unit. They put her back on all her meds. And then she gets back on the system. Well, she couldn't get the services that she felt like she needed or wanted, which was the housing and the financial support from the government, as long as she got better. So when things resolved psychologically, she no longer needed that. And you would think like we'd be like, okay, that's a good thing. But whatever it was, the fear was too deep for her to make the transition from the dependency state to the state of independence. Then instead of working with that, like, I would say growing pains of moving from one position to another and evolving, which, that's going to take some time to kind of build up your resources and figure out how you're going to make that happen. But if you really want that independence, it's kind of like sobriety. If you really want what's on the other side, you're going to go through that withdrawal. You're going to go through that temporary pain. The woman didn't see that of being any value. So she went backwards. And that's when it was like, okay. There's a manipulation going on here because she actually has the capacity to get better, but she's choosing not to now because what she gets in return works for her. That's a good enough life for her. That's actually where she's comfortable, and that's where she's going to choose to be. So you have to ask yourself how the behaviors and how the dependency is actually serving somebody. In that situation, it may not have been that if she healed, anything like would have happened. She probably would have gotten better and better and better and better and better, but she didn't want to do that. In other circumstances, though, where it's not so clear cut, it's like that's a lot of behavioral stuff right there for me. That's sort of a lot of like behavioral manipulation. I've seen other times in which I just see somebody that's so addicted to their own negativity and their perspective on life and how everybody's out to get them and no, everybody's no good, and they're like kind of that narcissistic personality structure where like all they do is test people and use people, and like so it's just all this negativity, and all this bad vibe going on. And that's literally what their whole personality is constructed with. It's what their whole life is built upon. And everything else, that seems maybe positive or gentle or kind about that person is really just a facade. It's just the persona that they're putting on because of whatever they're trying to get out of that person or circumstance. And when somebody's entire life has been built around the sick part of themselves, yeah, you got to wonder, like, okay, if this person heals, their whole life is like essentially over. And if they're elderly, I don't think it makes any sense to try to think like, okay, this person's 75, 60, 65, 80. Okay, if they change everything about how they're approaching life and thinking about life right now and they start to see it totally differently, I'm not sure that they can withstand starting an entire new life and birthing a whole new version of themselves. The soul rebirth in that situation, that might come with some collateral consequences there. That might be too great for the person to manage or withstand. So I do question that at times. And so if you think about, okay, how is this serving this person to stay sick? And it's like, but they're choosing to do that when they could choose another way. Yeah, well, yeah, and maybe there is an active conscious choice going on there, like I'm talking about in those fewer examples. But that makes me think about karma. What karmic lessons did their soul sign up to learn in this lifetime? And people always want to know, why can this person not get clean off drugs? Why can this person not do this, not do that? Well, if we take it to the metaphysical level, we have to consider that maybe it's because their soul is here to learn something through being the victim, through being the person who's dependent on others to take care of them, therefore no real drive to change and heal, because there's something to be learned in that. And maybe part of the soul's mission is to learn how to fully surrender into like being the victim. And when I say surrender, when you fully surrender, that's when you actually release it. And so when you stay stuck in it, you haven't surrendered yet. If you're still stuck in a pattern, it means you haven't surrendered yet. And sometimes it's going to take a long time of life naturally taking its course before somebody gets to the point of surrender. And in my experience, you're going to learn to surrender whether you choose it or whether life chooses it for you. You can't keep that fight going indefinitely. At some point, you're going to break. And that might be just in death when you reach the point where now your body's saying like, okay, we're done. That could be the surrender right there. That's why I do the work that I do, to try to bring people out of the shadows who I feel like maybe are on a path to do that and not stay in the shadows. Although I will say I've come across many clients, even in my work, that it becomes clear at some point or another that they need to stay in the suffering. And I will say I'm not that good at accepting that, and I can accept it, but I have to move on from it. I can't stay working with clients that need to stay in the victim, not at this point. And again, there I go saying I can't. I probably can, but it just takes a lot out of me. It really does. It's really challenging for me to exercise the unconditional love in those situations. So I'm definitely curious about where that might go for me and whether or not I will get to a point where I can embrace that and not have that totally burn me up. But when I can see that clients are needing, and not that they're just like not progressing, because that really is a projection on behalf of the therapist to say like, this client's not progressing, I can't work with them anymore. I don't really know how to explain it. It's a feeling that I get based on how the client's responding to the work that I'm bringing them through. And if I find or if I feel that they do need to stay in the suffering And not in the way that I take them through it, because I'm actually taking them into the suffering, but the goal is to move through it and release it. If they're unable to go into the suffering that I'm taking them into, because you're really going into the suffering at that point, that's the real experience of going into the suffering. We do that through the meditation. If they resist that, that means that they want to stay in their own suffering, which is just like a more chronic, less intense, but more chronic experience of the suffering. So anytime I try to take somebody through the meditation where we're going in through the heart and then going into the suffering to integrate it, which means you're going to have to feel it more than you're feeling it right now, and then let it go. If they resist that, then I know that they're needing to stay where they are. And I choose to move on at that point. Maybe at some point I'll be able to be fully present with that and not have any reaction to that, because it does eventually turn into resentment. So I know from an ethical perspective, I can't be working with clients that I have a lack of compassion for. And if I start to get annoyed with the client for not being willing to take on the suffering, which is really not, even just saying that right here, right now out loud, like that's not my place to make a judgment on that. If the client is communicating to me that they don't want to take on their suffering more fully, there's probably a reason for that. Maybe they really can't at this point. And what I've chosen to do at this point in my life is to accept that by referring them out. Until I get to a place where I can fully embrace that and be okay with that. Because frankly, I don't know what to do with that. I think that's what it comes down to. I just feel completely incompetent at that point. I don't feel like I can be helpful at all. Because I don't even know what I'm supposed to do if I can't provide the teachings that I've learned along the way. It's kind of like, well, then what am I here for? I'm just going to charge you to just sit here and listen to you the whole time? And listen to you stay in the victim and complain and blame everybody else. Like, my job is to bring all of that into awareness. Not like further enable that. That's just where I feel like I'm at in my life and why I'm here to do what I'm doing for folks. So I just don't think that's a good lineup for me. There are plenty of therapists out there that will take your money and just sit there and let you just do whatever you're going to do. I'm not one of them. So, yeah. But if I talk about unconditional love would be able to be fully present and allow that client to let you know where they're at and for you to fully accept that. So that's a huge limitation for me right there. But then again, we're talking about karma. Okay, well, that person might have a karmic contract to stay in the victim, in the blame and complain. They need to learn how to be a victim, which means they're going to have to go through most of their life being in that place. And frankly, like the woman from the emergency room that got back on assistance when she got sick again, that might not even be somebody that's in the victim necessarily, because I think she was very happy being where she was, receiving the assistance. So again, a lot of variations to what I'm talking about here. Just because you're in a dependent state, just because you don't want to heal, doesn't always mean that you're in the victim. You might actually be very well integrated in being in that dependency state. And that, to me, is you paying off your karma. That is like you are fully understanding how to move with the experience of being dependent. The victim is a little different because it is when you're blaming and complaining. And that's where I see like I don't know if how valuable that can be a lot of times. Unless you need to learn how to be the victim. So there's dependency and then there's victim consciousness. They're not actually the same. They can exist at the same time, but they're not the same in every circumstance. I have a much easier time with people that need to be in a dependent state and that can fully accept that and integrate that and move with that than I do with people that feel the need to blame and complain. And I think here's what it is just being an empath. I'm affected by other people's energy, and I don't want to leave my work feeling like I've just been slimed on. And that's what you get a lot of times when you try to help people that just want to stay in the blame and complain. It's like, well, then you don't need me here. Like, you can do that without anybody being present. So I do think when we talk about karma, that when I'll do a whole episode on the specifics of karma around how you pay it off, how we take it on, how it looks. But I think for the sake of why people don't heal, it might just be that that's part of their karmic path. That's the contract that they signed to be here. To not learn healing in this lifetime. Maybe they were a healer in their previous lifetime, and maybe they healed beyond belief in their previous lifetime. And now this lifetime is meant to stay unhealed. And again, all players of the collective play a role. What do we learn when we are the ones that are aiming to heal and to heal others? What can we learn from the people that don't want to heal? Maybe they're there to teach us something. And maybe in my next lifetime, I'll be one of those people. I mean, at this rate, you would think that that's probably where it's going to go. Especially if we think about that Chiron wound and how it flips. If I'm the healer in this lifetime, I'm a perpetrator in the next one. If I'm the healed one and I learn how to heal fully in this lifetime, the next lifetime I'll be the person that doesn't heal at all. And if we just think about balance, we talk a lot about integration, we talk a lot about balance in our personal lives. But we also have to keep in mind that there is a balance that is needed between lifetimes, amongst lifetimes, and within the collective as a whole. From us to the cosmos and back. And so my soul also needs balance. We go to one, that's why I always say when the pendulum swings to the one extreme, it must go to the other end of the other side of the extreme side of that spectrum, and then it'll come back in the middle. Our soul and the collective is going through that same transition, that same process. And so it's all very interesting when you scale back and you start thinking about things from the transpersonal perspective. Like forget about the personal for a second and think about it on the macro. Think about it on the macro. You're a part of a whole evolution of a whole system, including you being a part of your whole soul's evolution and order. So, yeah, it starts to get really trippy. This is like where the quantum physics, metaphysical aspect really starts to, the transpersonal aspect really starts to provide an opportunity to release the tension that we feel about trying to make things go a certain way, make our life go a certain way, make things unfold a certain way. There's an acceptance that comes when you start looking at things from the higher perspective. So, that's it. I think I'm going to leave it there for today. It's been real, you guys. I'm enjoying this now. Really, I am. I'm back on. And with a different kind of energy, a different perspective, different motivation for why I'm even here talking to you guys on this mic in the first place. And it feels good. I'm not going to lie. Kind of liking it. Kind of liking this jam. Liking this vibe that we're on right now. What else do I want to say before I wrap? Let's see. All right. Definitely go to the YouTube page because we're going to be doing the live streams from there. Go to the YouTube page, go to the Instagram page at Third Realm Integration. Make sure you subscribe on the YouTube page so you get notified. Turn on your little bell. You get notified every time I put something up. These episodes, the edited version, or it's not edited. All I do is just throw the music in. But the podcast episodes where I do a regular topic like this, I'm going to stick with Thursdays at 7:05 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as the release time. And then Fridays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 7:05 maybe, is where I'm going to try out the live stream. And I definitely want you guys to join in, ask questions, leave questions and comments in the chat because that'll drive the conversation. So that's it. Check out the Etsy shop. Check out the Facebook page, the Third Realm Integration page, and shoot me an email, info@thirdrealmintegration.com. Visit the website, subscribe to the newsletter, thirdrealmintegration.com if you have any questions at all about the services that I offer and how to work with me. All right, you guys, until next time, may the light always lead your way. Be well, everybody. Third Realm Integration Podcast and related content is intended to provide information and/or entertainment only and is not a substitute for mental health or medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Do not delay mental health or medical consultation or substitute a mental health or medical professional's opinion because of what you heard on this show. Seek the advice of your physician or another qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a mental health or medical condition. The host of this podcast does not provide emergency support for mental health or medical issues. For questions or concerns, visit your local emergency room or contact your doctor. Okay, this one I absolutely love. It's right on my website. A quote by Sarah Nicholson. The journey begins with a call, a cry, a whisper, a question, a moan. This is the summons to awaken from our slumber. This is a call that requires a response, a brave stepping out, a leap of faith. For on the other side of this threshold is a door that opens wide onto the vast, alive plains that are, to us, unknown.